John McMullen will join us too, as he always does at 4 p.m. I mean, we need to get some drinks first, or the people have to get some drinks first. Because
they're doing well at that so far.
They are cruising. The bar is absolutely packed. Tables are full. The sun is out. John McMullen would be in his glory down here.
Oh, but he'd have the Kangol on. You can't be burning the dome.
Of course.
$2 Miller Lights, by the way, now that it's happy hour. $5 crushes. Come on down and be a part of that. We are at the corner of Beach Avenue and Decatur Street in beautiful Cape May.
Prime location.
130, how many? 130.
No, 101.
103.
103.
103 paces from the sand.
Yep.
From the sand to the concrete, that's how far we are.
That's exact. We've confirmed it ourselves.
Yes.
Travis with the promo team doing a great job. But nonetheless, drink specials, great food. PT and I just scarfed down a chicken quesadilla.
Is that why I'm drooling all over the microphone?
I think that's why you're drooling. Your sweat towel is now also morphed into a napkin.
Oh, sure. That's it. It has multi-functions.
It's very diverse, as is John McMullen, our 97.3 ESPN Eagles insider. Follow him on Twitter at JFMcMullen. John, I think this is a good time to bring you in. That's a good segue for you, right?
Yeah, PT hit the nail on the head, too. Shockingly, I burned my dome last week at Eagles OTAs. It's like a rookie
You burned
mistake.
your dome?
It was like 70 degrees out. I said, it's a nice day. I'm not going to worry with the hat. Bad decision.
Now, Johnny Mac, you know that I also do not have hair. The only difference on the top of my head, the only difference is that I have it around the sides. Like somebody once texted out a picture of the fryer for the San Diego Padres. You know what that fryer looks like? And said that my hair looks a lot like that guy's hair, like Friar Tucker, somebody like that. So yes, it takes one to know one. You know, I have my 97.3 ESPN hat on right now so that I don't get burned. We're under a tent, but you know, you just never know. Ryan's got his Hurley hat on because it's stylish, and that's what all the ladies like.
Allegedly.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't know.
I'm embarrassed by the mistake. A day like today, yeah, it's obvious, but you can be quickly
humbled,
fooled when it's 70 degrees and windy, and that's kind of what happened last week.
The sun will sneak up on you, John. That's a rare mistake from you, but nonetheless, I think you learned your lesson. It is absolutely packed down here, man. We're having fun. Great Memorial Day Monday. Anything you do fun this weekend, John, before we get into some Eagles news and notes?
I was just grilling. That's fun. Little grilling early in the day, get it done. And as soon as I'm done with you guys, start with a little day drinking, a little happy hour.
Oh, man. Johnny's living the dream.
What's on Johnny Mac's grill? Like the traditionals, I would assume burgers and dogs, but what else are you throwing on there?
Today we had some burgers, we had some turkey breasts, we had some kielbasa, doing a bunch of different things.
And you are the man of the grill, I assume? Do you have do you have an apron that says "Kiss the Cook," or what do we got going on there?
I am the man of the grill. I stay away. I'm not a big apron guy, but hey, you need occasionally, but I would say more often than not, sans apron.
And I will say this, John, before we get into Eagles, and like Ryan said, Eagles and NFL, of course, we have that every day to talk to you about. But why don't you weigh in as an independent-ish third party? Have Ryan and I committed a party foul on Memorial Day weekend by asking for biggest sports blunders on the day that Bill Buckner passed away? Is that what's happened? Because we have Jeff Mosher and others out there ripping us for even bringing up this topic on this day, but I don't think we're ripping on Bill Buckner as much as we are trying to explore what people remember of biggest sports mistakes.
Yeah.
No, I don't have a problem. And I think if you're a Curb Your Enthusiasm fan, Bill kind of embraced that in what he was known for later in life, did a whole story, did a whole show about it, made light of it. So I think later he embraced it. It's a shame for him because he was a heck of a player, and obviously he's known for that one thing. But I do think he got over it, and I think in a weird way it's remembering him. So I don't have as big as a problem with it. But I understand. Hey, a lot of people get upset at a lot of things today, so you got to be very, very careful.
Yeah, neither of us are surprised at someone on Twitter coming back to us, hey, that's normal. You can post anything, and that's going to happen. But rest in peace, Bill Buckner. All right, time to get to some Eagles news and notes. John, I'm going to let you take the reins here. Is there anything that we need to be caught up on today? Obviously, with the holiday weekend, a little bit of a downtime, but anything new to report on for us?
No, I mean, Eagles are off just like everybody else, having a good time on Memorial Day weekend, and OTAs pick up again tomorrow, so we'll have plenty more news because it'll be the one day of the week the media is allowed in. So we're right in the middle, second week of the 3 weeks of on-field OTAs, and then you have the mandatory minicamp in June, and then comes the little lull in the NFL calendar, the only one really, if you look at it the entire year, and that's between minicamp and training camp. So we're going through the process and ramps up again tomorrow.
Now, John, if I read the media schedule right, Jim Schwartz, Mike Groh, both available in the auditorium. I know, like, Ryan and I prepare for a show. You prepare to grill these guys. Let's start with Schwartz. What are some of the topics that you want to address with the Eagles defensive coordinator?
Well, I think the most interesting aspect of what the Eagles have done on that side of the football is the defensive line and moving on from a couple of veteran players, trading Michael Bennett, who was so effective for him last year, and also Chris Long's retirement, which technically is not their fault, but if they promised him the same role, Chris would be back. So essentially the Eagles made that decision. And I think if you look at moving forward and things that could possibly go wrong for what looks like a very good, very deep team, Derek Barnett's got to come through. Malik Jackson's got to come through. So I think you have to ask Jim Schwartz what makes him comfortable with moving away from two veteran proven players and going in a different direction.
John, what do you think the locker room dynamic is going to be like this year for the Philadelphia Eagles? Chris Long, not there. Nick Foles, not there.
Malcolm Jenkins may be upset.
Malcolm Jenkins, I mean, I know you think there's really nothing to that, and I think both of us tend to agree on this side. But nonetheless, there's some storylines and there's some changes in the locker room. So who needs to step up, if anyone, as a leader, and is that culture as strong as it always has been?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. There's plenty of leaders in this locker room. It continues. I remember back when the first time the Eagles traded Jordan Matthews, and people were concerned about that because he was such a good guy and he was close to Carson Wentz. And there's always a concern when you lose somebody who's popular in the locker room. But that's life in the NFL. I mean, there's tremendous turnover in this league every year in 32 different cities, and the Eagles are no exception. But as a whole, I do think they have more sort of steady influences in a locker room, and whether it starts with, somebody like Malcolm Jenkins is not there right now at OTAs, but he'll be there at training camp, and he'll be there throughout the season. That's a very strong personality. When you talk about Nick Foles, when he wasn't starting, took a step back. He wasn't a strong personality in that locker room. Carson Wentz would do just fine. And you still have guys like Jason Peters and Jason Kelsey and Lane Johnson on that offensive line. Brandon Graham, who's the most popular maybe athlete I've ever seen from a media standpoint, Philadelphia. I don't think people realize how big of an influence he is in that locker room. So there's still plenty of guys who carry a lot of cachet.
And, John, I know you wrote about how the Eagles sent a voluntary message like, hey, it's voluntary. You don't need to be here. I mean, they obviously don't think it's that big a deal. Maybe he doesn't think it's that big a deal. But are there any other defensive stories that are kind of murmuring that we haven't heard about yet?
Well, I do think you have to look at linebacker, and there's some change there as well because Jordan Hicks is gone. Another sort of locker room leader. We just talked about some of those people, and he was the quarterback of the Eagles defense. Now, he was gone a lot of the time because of injuries, so that's part of the reason he's no longer here. And you do have to replace him. I think even though the game is changing and everybody's putting more defensive backs on the field, I think Jim Schwartz is more comfortable having two linebackers. Nigel Bradham's going to be one of them. But the second one is to be determined. I think L.J. Fort has an inside track to be that guy. He was a very good coverage linebacker last year in Pittsburgh, signed in free agency. But you still have to see it. He's still got to prove it. He's still got to play well in training camp and preseason and sort of seize that job. But Jordan was a proven guy when he was out there. The only concerns with him were injury related and the fact that he wasn't out there enough. And now the Eagles have turned the corner and gone in a different direction.
John McMullen with us, our 97.3 ESPN Eagles insider, NFL columnist. Follow him on Twitter at JF McMullen as well. So, John, since you brought up Jim Schwartz's name there, and again, he is going to talk tomorrow. We'll get to Mike Rowe and the offensive side of things in a minute. But Jim Schwartz, I always think when I'm watching an Eagles game with mostly fans, because that's usually who I'm surrounded by, not media, and that people will scream at me why doesn't the guy blitz more? And I try to explain to them, if you watched more than just this one game, you would understand Schwartz's defensive philosophy, especially concerning the blitz. So my question to you is, you've had the opportunity to watch Jim Schwartz's defense over the last couple of years and kind of learn when he likes to and why he doesn't like to and how he plays. So how would you describe Jim Schwartz's defensive philosophy, especially with when to blitz, when not to blitz?
Well, he would prefer not to blitz. I think that's pretty evident. Jim will admit that himself. The best case scenario for any defense coordinator is to get to the opposing quarterback with four guys. And if you're able to do that, you don't have to blitz, and you could back it up with coverage. And that's probably the most effective way to go about that. So that's how Jim enters, I think, every game and every week and every preparation period. And then it changes from there. I think people, for whatever reason, I don't know, I always joke around, maybe they're playing too much Madden, and it's always blitz, blitz, blitz. Yeah. And they don't see the bad of that. And, hey, Deshaun Jackson's back. Remember right away in Tampa when you blitz and boom, they go over the top and they hit a big throw down the field, whether it's Deshaun Jackson. Same thing happened with Adam Thielen when they were playing Minnesota. People, for whatever reason, tend to forget about that. And then you talk about all the injuries the Eagles had in the secondary last year. You really want to blitz when your corners are Provon LeBlanc coming off the street and Rasul Douglas and Avonte Maddox, a rookie. It's not going to work out well. So I think one of the reasons the Eagles were able to turn things around is because Jim Schwartz schemed so well to sort of mask the deficiencies of that injured defensive backfield. And even his critics they don't know it, but they even give Jim Schwartz credit by counting on players like Provon LeBlanc. If you talk to the average Eagles fan, they think Provon LeBlanc is a step away from being a Pro Bowl corner. He was on the street in November last year.
Right, so Jim having the ability to turn garbage into gold, to steal a Mark Zumoff cliche, right, as he finds guys off the street, plugs them into the defense, and finds a way to make it work. See, I think it's the other Jim that are still on Eagles fans' minds, John McMullen. I think they are still in love with the Jim Johnson defenses that often blitzed and left the corners on an island and said, we're coming, right, and they think that still works in today's NFL, and you're talking different times.
Different game.
Yeah, and they also had better corners. If you do have two really good press corners, you can afford to blitz more. but the Eagles don't have that. And maybe someday they'll get to that point. I think there's great hope that maybe Sidney Jones can develop and take that one starting job at left corner, Avonte Maddox in the slot, and then Ronald Darby on the other side. Who knows? If those guys prove to be good coverage options, then you will see Jim amping up the blitz. You're never going to see it, though, to a Jim Johnson level. That's not his philosophy, and that's the reason he calls the front four the engine of his defense, and that's because he puts so much pressure on those guys. It's those four guys, and it's going to be Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, Malik Jackson, Derek Barnett. They're going to be the nickel pass rush if everybody's healthy. He expects them to get to the quarterback.
John, you bring up the secondary, and an interesting dynamic for me is Jalen Mills. This is a starting corner in the Super Bowl not too long ago, and now you just ran through, key secondary pieces, and his name doesn't come up. What are they going to do with him? Is he a trade piece? Is he insurance policy? What will they do with him, and what should they do with him, I guess is the question.
Well, right now he's still rehabbing from foot surgery, so he's not engaging in OTA work on field. So I do think it's an opportunity for Sidney Jones to put his best foot forward. Jalen Mills is still the starter, and he'll start training camp as the starting corner. But I do think there's a difference between a seventh-round pick who's developed, and Jim Schwartz has done a tremendous job bringing along and scheming with, versus a guy who had sort of top 15 talent. So I think the hope is that at some point that top 15 talent of Sidney Jones bursts out and turns into a star player. But that doesn't mean it's going to happen. And as far as Jim Schwartz will start, I mean, Jalen Mills is a starting corner. I think everybody hopes Sidney Jones pushes him.
One more, John, for you on Jim Schwartz and his defense. People complain that defense allowed 2 more points per game in 2018 than 2017, but the offense scored 6 less points per game. I mean, maybe we should be blaming the offense instead of focusing all our attention on Jim Schwartz and why can't they stop anybody. Are we blaming the wrong person?
Well, yeah, I think it all comes together. And I tell people this all the time. And for whatever reason, a lot of observers, and it's not only fans, it's media as well, they look at things in sort of a stasis and sort of a vacuum, and like one thing doesn't affect the other. If you're scoring at a high level and you're on the field or you're playing with the lead, you're going to help out the defense. And if that's not the case, the opposite is true. Everything sort of comes together and has an effect on the other part of it. If you look at it just from a defensive standpoint, perfect example would be, hey, if you do have a good pass rush, you're gonna make your cornerbacks look better. Or if you do have really good corners, you're gonna make your edge rushers look better. That's just the way it works. And the offense can help the defense. A big, say, 13, 14 play drive that milks 8-9 minutes off the clock. Well, if your defense isn't on the field, guess what? Their numbers are going to be better.
And with that in mind, the leader of the offense, if you will, the offensive coordinator, if you will, Mike Groh, going to talk tomorrow too. I don't want to let you go without getting my question in, John, about the fact that Mike Groh last year, nothing but question marks, right? We weren't sure what to expect. What do you think we'll see from Mike Groh 2.0 in year 2?
Well, I hope he becomes more comfortable, number one, just from a personal standpoint, and I think that happens a lot. It's a lot on your plate to be a first-time coordinator, especially when you're replacing somebody like Frank Reich. And even, people assume that John DeFilippo would be the next in line and would have been if he didn't get an offensive coordinator job of his own where he could call plays. Didn't work out for him, but nonetheless. So Mike was kind of third in line. So right there is behind the 8 ball. And there's obviously a ton of expectations taking over a Super Bowl level offense. But it is Doug Peterson's offense. He's the leader of the offense. And Mike has a big part in game planning, just as Frank Reich did. And I do expect him to feel more comfortable in his role. And just from that aspect, I think you'll see improvement.
All right, John McMullen with the Eagles insider information every day on the Sports Bash at 4 p.m. Keeping Pete and I in check today.
John,
on this
get that
Memorial
bottle
Day.
opener, crack that bottle, crack
That's
the cap,
right.
whatever
you got to do,
you're
man.
going to, I hope they're handing it to you right now.
We apologize from dragging you away from the grill and the drinks.
The
but
grill and the chill. He's grilling and chilling.
Yeah. Professionalism. I hold off just for you guys.
Thanks, buddy.
You're the best. JF McMullen on Twitter. Give him a follow. Thanks, John. Have a great rest of your Memorial Day, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, you too, guys. Thanks.